it is beginning to look increasingly like the Democrats may not only hold the Senate, but may pick up a seat or two. Fetterman looks like he's going to beat Oz.
Yes.
So there could be a pickup or two. You know,
that's the most optimistic outlook I've heard of anyone on the left say about the upcoming election. I'll be honest with you.
I think it's likely they're going to lose the House, but I mean, you know, I'm just looking at the polling right now, and I think the trajectory is going in the right direction.
Hi, Sam. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can. Oh, I'm getting a majority report angle. Nice.
Do you want something different?
No, this seems highly apropos. Thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I wanted to just quickly talk a little bit. I don't know if you've been following everyday politics for a living or anything like that, and been seeing what's going on, but I wanted to get your take on the entire Nancy Pelosi tour that's going on right now.
I have absolutely no idea why she's doing this. I don't see any value to it whatsoever. You know, I can speculate, but my guess is it is a favor for some wealthy donor. Okay. I mean, that's my speculation. Otherwise, I can't understand why she's doing it. The president has asked her not to do it. The Pentagon has asked her not to do it. I can't in a million years think that she thinks there's some value to Democrats at large to do this. And I think it's just incendiary. I just don't understand what the value of it is. So you know, beyond that, I don't know what else to say. Like the most obvious. I don't even know what the most obvious answer is. Like you know, I don't know. I really don't know.
Is that typical though for a situation like this that has such high stakes for the president of the United States to be saying publicly he thinks it's a bad idea, and yet you'd still have the Speaker of the House engage in something of this nature?
No, it's not typical. It's certainly not typical for somebody from your own party to do that. I mean, there have been times like when I feel like I remember, like, you know, McCain and Lindsey Graham going to, to Syria as a way of, or engaging, maybe, I can't remember exactly where it was, where they, you know, trying to convince Obama to fund more Syria more aggressively or something like that. And there's been occasions where you have members of the opposite party really trying to, you know, box in the president in some way. But this is pretty atypical, without a doubt. I have no idea what the theory is here. Maybe, you know, I guess it's conceivable that, I mean, if I really, really wanted to, stretch my imagination, I guess outside of like a donor saying that she should go, or that it's conceivable that the U.S. government wants to send mixed signals, like imply that that even if the president wanted to not fight over Taiwan, that there is enough sort of like sentiment within the country that he would be obligated to. I guess that's conceivable, but that seems like really sort of twisted logic. But largely, I think that we see more or less shadows of what is going on within our government. And I think that there's no area that's more true than that than foreign policy.
What have been your review or thoughts of, say, the Biden administration's foreign policy up until now?
Not great.
Mm-hmm.
I like in the biggest measure of I guess the biggest measure of that would be, I think, their failure to secure a new deal with Iran. I
Mhm.
think that should have happened much earlier. I think that they, for whatever reason, that they've been holding out. I think it inhibited their dynamic with Saudi Arabia and Israel. I don't. I understand that he's nervous about inflation, and so he's got to go to Saudi Arabia to get cheaper oil. Now that everything else failed in terms of like moving the country into any type of different direction. I also think, I mean, I think um, he deserves some credit for being at least initially reluctant to get involved too deeply with Ukraine. I worry that that is getting a little bit that has gotten out of hand. That we're spending way too much money, in my estimation. I mean, I understand that Ukraine wants support, and I think I'm not necessarily.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
I think Ukraine, let me put it this way: Ukraine doesn't deserve to be invaded any more than any other country does.
Absolutely.
And I can understand, from at least certain quarters in this country, the value of weakening Russia and their military strength, which I think this has become. I mean, very early on in this conflict, we played a clip of Hillary Clinton where she was sort of like promoting our getting more engaged in this. And I had a concern in the way that she was talking that there was a belief that this could be Russia's version of what Afghanistan was to the Soviet Union. And and I'm afraid that's what it has become. It's also, hard to say to Ukraine, to the extent that we can get a sense of what the Ukrainian people want. It appears that they want weapons and they don't want to be invaded and they don't want to cede territory to Russia.
Mhm.
I think, you know, um, I don't know what the number is or the amount of military hardware that we should give a country in that instance. Um, Obviously, it's like going to a negotiated settlement, and you want to strengthen the weaker party or the party that's been invaded to sort of like maybe bring the other party to the table. It's unclear to me that that has been the agenda as much as it is like let's just degrade Russia's capacity. Really essentially for as long as Ukrainians have tolerance to do so.
Mhm.
And that seems to me to be a pretty brutal policy, but it's also sort of like, um, if that's what the Ukrainians want. But frankly, like to spend the tens of billions of dollars, maybe, oh, sorry, hundreds of billions of dollars that we're spending, I think is too much. Is it
Um,
hundreds of billions? I don't know if what we're at now, but it's sort of hard to measure because they're taking it from like multiple different budget lines, it appears.
yeah. I know this is going to seem incredibly strange given the seriousness of this topic, but on Twitch, we just got a giant raid. So thank you, Abelina Sabrina, with the message, "Hi, Sam." And
Are we in a hype train? Do we get to a hype train?
no, we're not on a hype train. We're just we just got a really
Well,
big
why?
raid. So just I don't know. It's just one of those days, Sam. I don't know what to say.
Wait.
Um,
I come on and there's no hype train?
the
You
instant
serious?
Sam Cedar hype train. It's the only
What
reason I invited
the?
you on. I don't know what's happening.
I'm a little bit. I don't know what's going on with the Serfs community, but that's a little disturbing. No hype train. All right.
Could I ask you about a domestic policy? What exactly is your thoughts on this new Manchin deal? Because I know people like the fact that it's in bad
Clean up
faith
your room.
because the Republicans play very dirty, so that's what everyone's celebrating. But it's kind of got what I'm reading are time bombs for climate change encoded within.
Um, we were just talking about this today. I don't even know if we actually ended up talking about it on the show, but
Yeah.
there's a I mean, I think like the get is as good as it's going to get with Manchin.
Hmm.
There is, I think to the extent that there's any leverage with Manchin, it really is just like Joe Biden saying, um, you know, somebody should investigate what went on when you were governor of West Virginia. And like, how did your daughter get so much largesse?
Mhm.
I imagine maybe, I don't know, maybe Biden's nervous about those type of investigations. But aside from that, there's no leverage because every time he craps on the Democratic Party, his poll numbers go up in West Virginia.
Yeah.
I think there's a side deal with Manchin, and the side deal. Where do I have it? The side deal. It's an interesting thing. It basically says we're going to open up these leases, more leases for drilling, and really, I think a lot of that is really just to pave the way for a specific West Virginia project that Manchin wants, a pipeline there, I think it is.
Mhm.
That bill needs 60 votes.
Okay.
And as far as like climate activists say, they say net, it's still a good deal overall. Well, it's still a net positive. Okay. So if you take away what comes from the Manchin, sort of like easing of other climate issues, and the money that is focused on, promoting electric vehicles and creating more wind farms and solar farms, et cetera, et cetera. Supposedly that's a net. And I accept climate activists' assessment of these things. I'm not in a position to sort of like make that assessment better than they are. But that's what most of these organizations are saying. So I think it's probably woefully insufficient. I think, even cutting our emissions by 40% by I think it was 2030. So 2030 is the benchmark. I need to check my notes, but
clean up your
which
room.
is, I think, 10% less than Biden had said originally that we would cut by 50%. I think that's largely going to be insufficient, but something is better than nothing until we get a better situation. But the interesting thing about Manchin's side deal is it needs 60 votes. I don't know the sequencing, whether the reconciliation bill comes first and then this other bill. I would imagine in the Senate, you won't have any defections on the Democratic side. Maybe Bernie, because he's pissed.
Yeah.
But, the real question is, will you get 10 Republicans after they're supposedly pissed at Manchin? It'll be interesting to see. I don't know how many Democratic, sort of defections you'll get. It's also hard for me to imagine it passing in the House. But,
clean up your room.
It's very, I think as we get closer to the election, you will see more of a chance for, people to basically screw over Manchin, because it is beginning to look increasingly like the Democrats may not only hold the Senate, but may pick up a seat or two. That looks increasingly possible. Fetterman looks like he's going to beat Oz.
Yes.
Johnson and Barnes, it's conceivable in Wisconsin. Arizona looks like, I think Kelly, I think, is going to hold on there. In New Hampshire, Hassan is going to hang on there. I think Warnock's going to hang on. So there could be a pickup or two.
That's the most optimistic outlook I've heard of anyone on the left say about the upcoming election. I'll be honest with you.
I think it's likely they're going to lose the House, but I mean, I'm just looking at the polling right now, and I think the trajectory is going in the right direction. There was a poll by Suffolk USA Today 2 days ago, and I think it must overstate the case, but they took a similar poll in mid-June after the leak of the Alito brief, or I should say ruling, And they found that only 29% of Democrats were sure they were going to vote. And now they just took that poll. It's like 65% say they're sure they're going to vote. Now, that seems to me to be like almost like impossible to believe jump. But if it's even remotely close to that, and then you look at like the candidates they have, like Herschel Walker is, I mean, Dr. Oz. I mean, these guys are bad candidates. Yeah. Ron Johnson's, always been a moron, but he's done well there. But Mandela Barnes, I think, is could be very strong in Wisconsin. I mean, it's really how much of a vote comes out is really going to be a big issue. And but in New Hampshire, like I say, Maggie Hassan looks like she's okay. Looks like it. Mark Kelly, like if Blake Masters becomes the nominee, this is a dude who's like talking about maybe we should roll back contraceptives, and
yeah.
So we'll see, but he's going to have a bunch of teal money. So then Glenn Beck will be, Glenn Greenwald, excuse me, will be down there, I'm sure, campaigning for him. Or, and so, it remains to be seen. But I don't think it's inconceivable, particularly if the Democrats let's put it this way. If they hold the Senate, I think they have an opportunity to pick up one or two. I think it's going to go one way or the other. Let's put it that way.
Well, what are your thoughts on cinema kind of being the bad guy? But I've heard people on the left also say that there's just always a bad guy of the hour. Like things can't take place unless there is one or two obstructionists. Do you buy into that at all? Or do you think that the solution really is to continuously give and push for Democrats to have as many potential seats as possible?
Do I think that she'll be the bad guy in terms of this reconciliation deal, or just like going forward?
I would say going forward in general, right? It's usually Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are the two no votes on crucial
right.
bills.
Well, Manchin, like I say, he's in a plus 50 Trump state. His poll numbers have gone up like 17% since he did all this. Sinema, not so much.
Yeah.
And her whole strategy is to sort of like rebuild John McCain's coalition, but doing it as a Democrat, which I think is a fool's errand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the results of the Republican primary and the results of the general election will, if they go in the way that I'm assuming, which is Blake Masters wins and then Mark Kelly wins. If that's the case, I think she's going to have to make some recalculations because she's not going to want to alienate the Democrats. Like, she's going to need it's at one point she's going to have to realize like, this is not going to work for me in Arizona. If she wants, maybe she doesn't want to be an elected, maybe she doesn't want to be senator anymore, but I don't know what she thinks her job's going to be. If she thwarts the Democrats over and over again, she's going to have a tough time being a lobbyist for the Senate, right? Because everybody's going to see her and be like, oh, you're the asshole who, made me have to raise an extra $400,000 in my state because I had to, justify why you were a bad person or something and why you wouldn't let anything go through. So I don't know. I think she could turn out to be a problem, continue to be one, but without the cover of Manchin, and if there's a different dynamic, it's going to be trickier. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so you're the most positive person I've interviewed about the upcoming election, and I'm not saying that in any way is a bad thing. It's actually kind of neat, because I wanted to know, do you think Roe v. Wade is one of the biggest things that has been turning the tide in terms of that increase in people saying they were actually going to get out and vote, like that rise to 67% amongst Democrats?
I if that number's accurate, the answer is yes.
Okay.
And believe me, I'm surprised by it too. We did a live show in Boston in May after the leak.
Mm-hmm.
And had Natalie Shure on. She's a writer. I'm sure you're familiar with her. And she had just written a piece, I think it was in the New Republic, arguing that it's not going to help Republicans and it's not going to help Democrats because of who these abortion bans impact, at least on a state level right now. And it's mostly poorer women and or poorer people, who can get pregnant.
Yeah.
And her theory was that it wasn't going to have an impact, and that did not sound unreasonable to me. I mean, it's just a prediction one way or another. But like I say, if you look at this poll, the Suffolk USA Today poll, it just came out a couple of days ago. If you look at the generic ballot, something has changed over the past 45 days significantly. And it seems to me that, no, this has energized the biggest voting bloc in the Democratic Party, which is women. And, broadly speaking. And if that maintains, which I suppose it could wane, but I don't know why it would, because the only thing that's going to start happening is that there's right now, this is again off the top of my head, I had it today, but approximately, I think 7 states that have already banned abortion. There's another 4, I think, that have it about a 6-week abortion ban. There'll be another 2 once their court proceedings go through, will have an abortion ban. Then there's going to be, I doubt any of these Republican controlled states will try and pass a ban before November, but there's going to be talk about it. And then there's also going to be, most of the reporting we've had about how women and people who can get pregnant lives have been endangered by pregnancy. For the most part, they've come out of Texas. Now, we had that one out of Ohio with the girl, the 10-year-old girl who had to go to Indiana. But most of them come out of Texas because Texas had like a 4 or 5 month jump, or really I guess a 6 month jump start on this, because of their ban. But we're going to start hearing more and more stories coming from these 11 states, because the exceptions to these rules are, they might sound good to some people in theory, but in practice, they don't function. There's you don't walk into a hospital with like a meter on your head, like I am this close to threatening my life because of this pregnancy, right? And what's the cutoff? Well, the doctor's got to go talk to the lawyer in the hospital. And the lawyer said, because the lawyer's not a doctor, they'll say something like, 40% chance of life-threatening. Like, how do I measure that? I don't know. There's no, you can say this medical treatment has a 90% survival rate or whatever, but that's all data from the past. You can't look at somebody and say, you're going to have a 90% survival rate.
Yeah.
If we perform this operation or we hold off on this operation, there's no way to make that assessment. Rape and incest, I'm sorry, these exceptions don't work in practice because you got to wait for a trial to establish that you have been raped. How do we assess that? And without there being a trial? Well, a trial is going to take some time. It's going to be more dangerous for the women. I mean, so this is, I think there's going to be more and more stories going up to the election. So if that polling is correct, I think I think the Democrats actually might do far better than anticipated. Which, again, there's headwinds, but the generic ballot is the generic ballot, polling. And so, we'll see. But I think there is, room for optimism as to what's going to happen, at least in the Senate.
Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form, available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Just, we are prepared to embark on a mighty jihad in your name. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your humble jester, attempting in vain to get you to laugh. To our valiant knights of the Round Table, Benji Arnie, Tech Tink, Scary Earth Human, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Mayred, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood. It doesn't matter what I believe, it only matters what I can prove. Egbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Coulter Smith, Jenna Tao, Quiet 185, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, The Tim Caucus, Multimondi, Trevbot, EXE, Brian Ephraim, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojack, Saren 42, Catherine, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, Agent NDN, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Zach Christensen, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our mugs and salute our brave heroes off to another glorious conquest.